shows you what you need for CSS. It's only just
All right, we are COMP229, fall 2016, and it's week 8, part 1 of our broadcast here at Centennial. We're talking now about MVC with Visual Studio, and what is that, right? I have put up a little PowerPoint that I want you to refer to on this stuff, and I'm going to be putting up a couple PowerPoints this semester on just MVC and Entity Framework and stuff again. Last part of the semester, we did, first half of the semester, we did a couple of different things with web forms. And what I wanted to go into a little bit more detail with some of the stuff we talked about in the first half. One thing to note, which is a very happy thing, which is some of the stuff you learned from the first half is applicable to the second half. For example, identity when it comes to security. We're going to be talking about that again when it comes to MVC. So the security system we use first half, very similar to what we're going to do the second half. Also, Entity Framework. We use Entity Framework from the first half. We're going to be doing Entity Framework in the second half. So those two things are things we're going to repeat, right? I highly recommend, if you don't have access to Azure for whatever reason, people who aren't here physically and who are at home, a lot of people here during the exam, they're not here today. You need to get on Azure. I'm going to be putting everything on Azure, right, including our database from now on, right? So please, if you don't have access to Azure, you have to work to get it, because we're going to be working on it. So we're going to be talking about intro to Mvc and Controllers today, right? Which is what we're going to be really hitting. What is MVC? We're going to be talking about that. Kind of an overview of where MVC came from. So a little bit of more theory today than we normally do. How to create an MVC application. We're going to make one, a little simple one. How MVC applications are structured. We're going to talk about that. So we're going to look at, just like we did with web forms, where we actually looked at the structure of the platform. We're going to do the same thing now. So I'm going to make a demo project, and then I'm going to also start working on what we're going to be working on for the semester in terms of our demo, which is going to be the MVC Music Store. Okay, so I'm going to be building with you something called the MVC Music Store throughout these next several weeks, which is going to help you build your final the demo you're going to, or the work you're going to do for me when it comes to your fantasy restaurant, right? As well as the stuff that you're going to be taking care of for your project. Now, what is the fantasy restaurant? There's going to be 2 assignments. I've got them already pre-pegged, like I said. The first assignment you're going to get next week, which is going to be your fantasy restaurant. Again, if you want to make something else, let me know. But you have to adhere to the criteria. And then a couple weeks after that, you're going to get your final project criteria. Within a couple weeks. And then your final project will run you until the remainder of the session with us all together. I have done a final exam in this course before, right? So when we do something like the last week, week 14, there may be a final exam in this course. I know that there's 1 week, and I believe it's the week of December 7th. I got to look at that in my calendar for a second. If we look at December 7th for a second together, right? So if we look at calendar, the week of December 7th, if I look at the calendar that we have, right, we can see that December 7th is a Wednesday, which sits you guys, right? Now, if we look at the number of weeks, if we sit where we are right now, we're week 8. So week 9 is next week, week 10, week 11, week 12. Take a look. And the week of week 13, which is December 7th, I have a problem. I have a conflict, right? So we may cancel classes that day. I'm telling you in advance, week 13, right? But it doesn't mean that we won't do anything that day. It means that you can use it as a workshop week, a week where you do your stuff that's due for week 14, right? I also may do a broadcast from even though if I'm not here, I may do a broadcast at an alternate time, right? So we may do one class that's virtual, where I'm not physically here with you guys, and I do a broadcast, and I probably will do an exam review on that day. So week 13, just letting you know in advance. Probably won't be available that day. We maybe cancel classes. As we come closer to that day, I will give you more details and remind you, right? There's no classes, and I'll put up a reminder on Blackboard, or sorry, on eCentennial as well. Okay? So, but that's what's happening. In week 14 is when we're going to run our exam. That's what it's going to be running. So I'm letting you know in advance. The last week of classes, that's where we're going to run our exam. It's going to probably be the whole time, right? Because we're going to be building something with MVC, just like we did. We built something with web forms. You're going to build something with MVC, okay? Chances are that's all that it's going to be. Okay. So again, we're going to be using something called the model view controller pattern. Okay, and I'm going to just make this a little larger for you guys so you guys can see it. And you can follow along online as well. So model view controller, why that pattern, right? We're going to be talking about that a little bit. Okay. So let's think back. So back in the day, 2002, ASP.NET 1 existed, right? Now remember, ASP.NET is not MVC. ASP.NET is the underlying system that supports MVC and web forms and web API. Those are the three things it supports right now, okay? So back in the day, ASP.NET 1 came out, and then we had web forms. And the two main libraries that we had was system.web.ui, right? That's a library, as well as system.web. Those two libraries, or namespaces, right? And as it says here, web forms layer and the plumbing, like it says here for web, which supplies the basic web stack, handlers, all the stuff. Those two things that were established way back in the day, 2002. Now we're sitting at 2016, okay? It's 14 years later. Lots of stuff has changed in the web. Things that you couldn't do before with JavaScript, you can do with it now. Things that you did lots with PHP, we don't do as much anymore, right? Lots of changes in the web, and as we go forward, there's going to be lots more changes, right? So the problem with Microsoft is, you know, when we talk about MVC is, where are they going now? Well, there's something called Mvc Core, right? That's the latest and greatest version of Microsoft's ASP.NET MVC. ASP, so it's called Mvc Core. Okay, Mvc Core is like MVC 6. MVC 6 never came out. Okay, so we're looking at from ASP.NET 1, we're at version 6 equivalent. Okay, now these are very many little minor versions all along the way, like 1.1, 1.2, and so on. All these other versions that took us to where we are today. Okay. So what is MVC? It's a design pattern. Okay, it's not just for the web. Okay, we use it a lot in the web, but we also use it for things like iOS, right? If I want to program iOS mobile devices or whatever, so Apple devices, I use MVC pattern, right? And I use MVC pattern for a lot of other stuff. It's a design pattern, a software design pattern, okay? It's not a web design pattern, right? And what is it? It's a separation of concerns, right? We separate concerns from model that connects to the database, right? The view, which displays our UI, right? And the controller, which is the logic behind how to get stuff from the model through the database and pump it out to the UI. Okay, that's what it does. The controller is like the middleman, the delegate, if you will. He's the ambassador of the whole thing, right? Or she, we'll say she, because there's a lot of ladies in the course too, right? So the controller, she controls everything, right? The UI, the view, he shows us, you know, he's the presenter. He's the presentation layer, if you will. And the model, that deals with all the data, right? So how we link to the data, and each model itself is just a class. So we're going to talk about that a lot, just like we did last half of the semester, right? We had models actually, right? Because we built one when we used the entity framework. Now we're going to take that to the next level, because we're going to do it again, okay? But I want you to think about all this stuff. So controllers and models, they're just classes. So if you've done C# classes, then you understand a little bit about models and controllers, okay? Views, I want you to think about it as we're going to use a different view engine. So before we're using web forms view engine, right? Which is a totally different view engine. Now we're going to use something called Razor. Razor is Microsoft's current view engine, all right? And it uses a different syntax, right, for interpolating our logic with our view, right? So how we inject logic inside of our view. Different view engine. Okay, so again, I think what you have to think about, again, we're going to be using entity framework. And think about this as the data access layer, the model, all right? And again, a view, we're going to use a template. The template we're going to be using is we're going to be using Razor to dynamically generate a code. Again, we're going to take code from the server, and we're going to smash it together with a template to produce the final HTML that we're going to show to the user, okay? And then we have the controller, and that's really the logic, like I said, that kind of plays between the model and the view. Okay. Let's talk about this. So MVC 5, the current version we're going to be using today, and the one we're going to be using for the remainder of the semester, right? Released with Visual Studio 2013. So it's 3 years old. Believe me, it's really old. For us to be talking about something in 2013, But we can't go to MVC6, like I told you. MVC6 is so new, and the penetration of MVC6 is so low in terms of how much it's used in the marketplace. Like maybe 1% of the population right now that has Microsoft products uses MVC6. So why am I going to go there with you guys? Here's the great thing about MVC6. MVC6 is, or Mvc Core is what I should say, is cross-platform. That means I can do it on my Mac, right? I can do it on a Linux machine potentially, right? I can do it on Windows. That's a real crazy thing that Microsoft has done. Why? Because back in the day, Microsoft swore up and down that they would never, ever embrace open source. That's a really cool thing that they're doing. And actually with the current things, the way things are going with Microsoft today, think about this. They just came out with this like Surface Studio, right? So we'll talk about this a little bit. Who saw the announcement with Microsoft? Surface Studio, that crazy thing that they just released last week. Anybody? One person saw Microsoft Surface Studio. It's kind of cool, right? I mean, what it is basically it's the ability for a professional to draw physically on this massive tablet that's about this big. So Surface gone on steroids. It's like $3,000 or $4,000 machine. You can lean on it, right? It's kind of cool. And you can draw on it. It has Windows 10 operating system, and it's a really cool multi-touch platform with a dial that you can actually physically dial, right? And to change contextual menus. Neat. Why? Microsoft is chasing Apple, believe it or not, right? If anything, I was more surprised and happy with Microsoft's announcement with the Surface than I was with Apple's new MacBook Pro, right? Huh? The touchpad thing. The touchpad thing did not impress me. And I'm an Apple user, I mean, as you can see, right? But the thing with it is, not because it didn't impress me, I don't think it's enough. I think that, and people said this a lot as well, I think Apple's really kind of slowed down as an innovator, right, compared to what they were before. I don't think they're not innovating. I think they're really innovative with some of the stuff they've come out with. But think about the iterations they've come out with. They came out with the Apple Watch, right? Then they came out with Series 2. It's better, but Series 2 should be Series 1 to me, right? I think that's the way they're going, and it kind of bugs me. Some of the reason why companies do this kind of stuff as well with software as well is, you know what, if the product is so way out there, it's so out of whack, there's not going to be a lot of people buying it. Because even though it's the most modern product, right, it's actually a design principle if you think about it, right? I want to give you something you've kind of seen before, only a little different. That same thing works for movies too, right? If I come up with this same movie, like ever notice how the movies come out and you have some kind of asteroid movie and there's another asteroid movie and they're both at the same time? Or you have a bunch of superhero movies that come out and they're all kind of the same, right? Like, I'm saying they're just kind of the same. Like, like for example, we had Civil War this year with Marvel, right? If you're a superhero movie watcher, right? And we also had Suicide Squad, right? And it's kind of, or Batman versus Superman, which is, I don't know, I kind of like Marvel's version better. Batman versus Superman really disappointed me. And the reason why is because it was too grim. It wasn't funny like it was, like Marvel's was. And I mean, I'm just talking about movies, but the reason why I'm talking about this stuff is, but this is what they're doing with software, right? It's the same kind of stuff. They've come up with MVC5, right? They've introduced Mvc Core. And Mvc Core is such a different beast, right? That people aren't really taking to it as fast, right? And they won't for a while. Same thing with web forms. Web forms is going to be out there for a while, right? Because it's very simple to use. For complex applications, it doesn't work very well. Okay, let's be honest, right? It was hard to do what we did last half semester with web forms, right? You're going to see it's going to be easier with MVC, but it's new, and it was so new in 2013. Not a lot of people, especially MVC version 5, it didn't really take. Okay, and I'm saying that in terms of the entire industry, in terms of penetration, and because there's lots of competition right now. Okay, so a little bit about how things are moving. So we want to talk about the idea of, what they talked about was, hey, let's incorporate Bootstrap templates, right? So because they recognize a couple things. One, most people who use Microsoft MVC and stuff like that, they're not designers. Let's be honest, right? They're programmers like you and me, right? So they have this front-end framework, Bootstrap, and Bootstrap, the great thing about that is it gives you a responsive front end so that it works cross-platform. It can work on different mobile devices from the out of the box, right? With very little knowledge. That's why we've been using Bootstrap this whole time. It's not a CSS course. I keep telling you this, right? And Microsoft kind of, thought about that. And it's also an industry best practice to use Bootstrap. I also recommend using Font Awesome or some kind of font icon, because it's good practice as well. The other thing that the problem was, because remember, ASP.NET MVC was made for programmers by programmers. They said, hey, why am I going to keep on doing the same goddamn things over and over again when I program stuff, right? I want to be able to scaffold my applications quickly, right? And so, and with enough customization capabilities, right? So I'm not going to kill myself like I did with web forms, right? So I want to be able to scaffold quickly. This is truly where we went into rapid application development. I want to scaffold out, I want to create my logic, and from my logic, I want to create my views. I'm going to show you the whole gamut of stuff together. We're going to do it together today, all right? And we're going to do some simple examples, and then we're going to get into something more complex. Okay, so MVC, it was made by programmers for programmers. Authentication, right? Authentication is built right into MVC. And I'll tell you this, we are never going to build authentication from scratch with MVC. Not going to happen. Why? It's like truly reinventing the wheel when it comes to stuff. Web forms is a different animal. We did built-in authentication from scratch. And I'm glad that you guys did that, okay, for the most part. But I'll tell you, we cannot do it with MVC. It's undoable, right? When it comes to, I mean, it would take a long time. And now you're kind of going against the design pattern of MVC. If I'm going to do something from scratch, right? If you think about it, with MVC identity and security, then why am I using MVC? Why don't I just use Node.js or something else if I really want to do it from scratch? MVC is there for us to scaffold quickly. It's not for us to do everything from scratch. You could certainly modify. It's far easier for us to scaffold and modify as opposed to everything from scratch, especially from an enterprise perspective. Here's one thing that you probably can't do as well in a very short time. I can build out security with MVC, and it'll be pretty rock solid. I'll tell you right now. It's going to be anti-hacking, right? And all kinds of security stuff that's built in. By default, it's going to start off with a 10-character password, right? All kinds of stuff that's really modern and the way we go. Also, it includes things like, because we're using identity and OWAN, we're going to do things like third-party providers for security this time around, right? So the ability for us to use Google or Twitter or Facebook or whatever to log in, as opposed to using your own login credentials. And we talked about this briefly last part of the semester, which was, why would I want to keep someone's sensitive information on my system? Why? The answer is I wouldn't, right? I'd rather have a big provider like Google or Microsoft or somebody else managing security and authentication. And if one of those big players authenticates the person, I'm okay with it. Think about it. A lot of people do that right now. And why? Because they can provide a more solid background for security than I can. In my little mom and pop shop, who can get hacked first, me or Microsoft, right? Me is the answer. And it's probably going to be those Russian hackers right now, right? That are all mad at Trump. Okay, I'll tell you right now. It's going to happen. Who knows? Trump, Hillary, it's all the same, right? But at the end of the day, both are bad, right? But maybe one's worse than the other one. I don't know. I'm not American. But was that? They're both worse. Okay, yeah. I don't know. But anyways, I don't have an opinion on this. I have to say there's no opinion on my end, right? The best of the worst. There you go. It didn't come out of my mouth. Okay. So the idea here is that, you know what? It's better from a security perspective to have someone else serve it. And we're going to be talking about this next half semester. So I'm introducing you to today. We're going to be talking about that. So, so this is really what ASP.NET 5 is all about. So how do we create an application? Well, the one we're going to be creating together, and I put it up here. I also gave you the link online. There is this MVC Music Store application we're going to be building. This is the tutorial we're going to be running with for the remainder of the semester. Okay. Remember, I kind of had a walkthrough the first half. I'm going to do a walkthrough the second half, but it's going to be a different kind of walkthrough. So if I kind of go in here and take a look at it, what are we building? If you really wanted to download this from scratch, you could, right? I'm totally cool with that. But I've already included the link for you, and I'm also giving you the SQL files we're going to be using today, right? And we're going to do various versions of this as we move on through the course, so we can understand what's going on. Okay, so again, this is where I'm getting everything. You can certainly download all the assets from here if you want, and you can test it out. Now, this was made for an earlier version of MVC. This was made for MVC 3. We're at MVC 5. How is that going to work, Tom? You're going to say it's going to be fine, right? There's some stuff that's changed, and there's some things we're going to skip, right? But for the most part, if we follow the example, and if we go through going through the walkthrough, there'll be enough for us to learn to make an e-commerce application. The person who wrote this e-commerce application with others is John Galloway, which is a famous Microsoft guy. He does a lot of the development. He's one of the lead developers and authors of Microsoft right now. He's still active. And if you ever want to see stuff from him, you can always go to Microsoft Virtual Academy. I highly recommend. It's free. I go to microsoftvirtualacademy.com. I'll bring this up for a second so you can see it. And hopefully it'll come up, Microsoft. There we go. If you look through here, you can see that there's stuff on web development, right? Okay, there's web development. That's what we want to do. You can also look at C#, all kinds of other stuff. Notice that they're moving towards Node.js, like I told you, right? See the competition, how to set up a Node.js app. Building Node.js apps with Node.js and Electron, really cool. Electron is the same app that built Visual Studio, right? Or Visual Studio Code, I mean. So kind of really cool stuff. And if you search for stuff on MVC, so if I search for, MVC, right, on the Microsoft Virtual Academy, it's interesting to see all the stuff they have. Here's one, an introduction to ASP.NET Core, formerly ASP.NET 5, right? That's ASP.NET Core, not MVC 6, right? So that's one thing to look at. But if you scroll down, and if I was going to look at by author, and if I was going to search for some of the stuff that I want to look at, there's tons of videos here, and it's all free for you guys, to learn ASP.NET and so on. Here's one, Introduction to ASP.NET MVC. Let me take a look at this one for a second. And I can't play the video because, there's I'd be violating rights. Let me stop this right now. But one of the things is, what's MVC? And all this kind of stuff. This is a great little video. It's going to show all the content. Everything from creating and configuring models to the power of Visual Studio. And notice this, there's 51 minutes, but this is a huge amount of watching time if you want to spend. There's lots and lots of videos here. I've gone through this entire series, right? If you want to see it, and it's actually a really good. Now this is 2014, which is exactly the perfect time because this is relating to MVC 5. Okay, so this is the one you want to look at. So if you want extra information and you want to help yourself with your project, this is a great resource here. Okay, and it's right for Microsoft. So you got some really good guys. They're going to go through. Sometimes they're a little wordy, and I have to play them at double the speed. I have to be honest, right? But you can always slow down when you don't understand something. And there's some great information here that can really supplement your learning. Okay, so I highly recommend this. Take a look at it. Microsoft Virtual Academy is free, and it's a great opportunity for you guys to have additional resources. Okay. All right, so let's get to building. This is the first part. I'm showing you what we're going to be building. And what I'm going to be doing right now is I want to create a couple things for myself. I want to do some prep work. I know I'm going to be using Azure, so I'm going to go to portal.azure.com. Do this with me, all right? So that way we can do it all together. So if you haven't had a chance to create your database yet, let's make a database together, okay? So I'm going to do this from scratch because you may have not done it. Now, the first part wasn't required. This part you guys should all have access, okay? This is the wrong one. I'm just going to sign out of this one. That's my professional account. I'm going to sign into my other account. Okay. So remember, what we had built last time was, here's COMP229, our SQL database, right? I can't use this anymore. Here's a reason why I can't use it, okay? When we do, I'm telling you this in advance, all right? So try not to do this from, if you're working with a database from first half of semester for security, and you want to use the same database for the second half semester, it will fail. The way they do security for MVC is vastly different than we do it for web forms, and will be incompatible. So we need a new database. How do I make a second one? Okay. So remember, when I look at the database, for me, first of all, I have to understand what Microsoft is offering here. Notice that this is located in Canada East. I can only have one database server and one database as a result for each location. Okay? So I'm going to make a new one, but it's not going to be in Canada East. It's got to be somewhere else. Let's do that. So if you made Canada East, don't use it again, or we'll fail. Let's click on the plus. On the plus, if you have pure access, okay, notice that I can click storage or databases. Well, databases seems like the right one. Let's click SQL database. If it's grayed out, click it anyway. All right? Now, I'm going to name my database, and I named it COMP229. I'm going to call this, I'm really going to be creative here, COMP229B. Right? That's what mine's going to be called. You can make yours whatever you like, right? But that's going to be my database name, COMP229B. I'm going to make, instead of my Canada being my resource, I'm going to choose something else. It's not going to be this. I'm going to make a new resource. So let's just suppose you don't have a resource. I'm going to make a new resource, right? I'm going to call this Canada something else. I don't know, maybe Canada Central. There is such a thing, right? I'm going to start with a blank database. I definitely want that. I don't want a database with some other stuff in it. And my server, this is the important part. I need to make a new server. It can't be the old one, COMP229 F2016. Can't be, right? Like I had before. I'm going to make a new one. So I'm going to name it COMP229B-2016, F2016, right? And for my username, I'm going to put Thomas. I'm going to give you my username and password so you guys can access it, right, for this time around. Again, my password is going to be Centennial, capital C, 2016, exclamation mark, right? So Centennial, capital C, 2016, exclamation mark. And if I didn't type it right, it would be wrong. Notice it says West Europe. I don't want West Europe, that's for sure. I want something in Canada, right? Because that's closer to us. So notice there's Canada Central. I'm going to choose that one. Okay. And it says allow Azure services to access the server. Definitely. Okay, don't put this no. Click select. Okay, now it says, do you want to use SQL Elastic Pool? Let's leave it at not now if you have that option. Notice my pricing tier is free. That means I'm not paying. If you have a pricing tier that says pay as you go, stop what you're doing. Okay, that means you've done something wrong and you're going to pay. And by the way, you pay big with SQL Server. All right, so don't do that. Okay, I'm going to click Pin to Dashboard and then click Create. Now, if everything goes well, my SQL Server is going to start deploying. It's going to take time for us to deploy our SQL Server. Guys and girls, I want you to know this. All right, you only have one SQL Server with one database, but you can have many tables. So, for your final project, right? Please don't use this one that we're making right now. Okay, you may need to use other ones. All right, please don't delete the one from before either. That would be not good because I need to mark everything still. Okay, I still need to access a couple of things. So if you've been using one from before, or if you haven't done things with by passing me your database, leave it alone. Okay, you may need to create several of these. All right, for example, you may need to create a database for assignment number 2, separate from this one, right? Because this is our lesson database, the one that we're going to be using just for lessons for our MVC Music Store. That's what I'm going to be doing here. Okay, MVC Music Store is the one I'm going to be making, right? So I'm not going to be using it for anything else. I'm not going to be playing with this database for my assignment 1 or for my final project. If you do that, you will mess yourself up. Make separate database servers for those, right? So for your assignment 1, make a database server just for assignment 1. And then make a separate one for your final project, right? So that assignment 1 and your final project have nothing to do with each other, right? There's good reason for this, because they will be sharing stuff, and you don't want that to happen. All right, here's the next thing I got to do. What's the next thing? I've created my database server. Am I ready to go yet? Firewall. All right, I got a problem. So I'm going to click on this server name. Right, here we go. And here's Canada Central, right? And if you notice down in here, I got this area here for firewall. Here's firewall. I want to click on this firewall thing, right? And my rule name is I'm going to call it everyone. Oh, by the way, here's something else you need to know. Right? For the school, you can only access this stuff on the wired network. So if you're on wireless right now, we can do this part, but connecting to it, you need to do from the wired network. Wireless will not work. It's blocked. Okay, so I'm going to say 0.0.0.0 to 255.255.255.0. So that's kind of opening up a large amount of IP addresses. I'm going to click Save up top here, right? Which creates an update to my server. Yay, I've got my new server. Okay. There we go. So I got my server. I've created this in preparation. Okay, I'm telling you how to do this so that way you have a server for your MVC Music Store, right? Now, what if you're connected to the machine in front of you, right? Is that going to help you, right? Like if you're not connected to the machine in front of you, you're connected wirelessly, right? If you're connected wirelessly, you won't have access. Now, here's what I'm going to try. I'm going to try to connect to the wired network somehow. That I'm going to see how that's going to work. Right now, I'm not going to do it, but during the break, I'm going to see if I can connect wired. I'm not sure that it'll work anyway because of my MAC address, right? Hotspot is cool, but I'm going to eat my phone up with what I'm going to do, right? And I'm going to also broadcast. So I'm going to broadcast and hotspot at the same time. It's going to be kind of weird, right? You're going to lose your connectivity, and then broadcast will be out the window. I can't do both, so it's going to be pretty hard, right? We'll see what happens, okay? Worst case, I'll broadcast from the machine in front of me. Right, and we'll make another video. The second video won't be from my machine; it'll be from the machine in front of me. Right? We'll try that out and see how bad it is. All right. Okay. Now that you've done this and you've got your SQL server, this part is done. And I've been deliberately slow on this one because I want you guys all to see this. Right? Okay. Now I cannot access this thing from my wireless network. I'm just telling you this in advance. So if I go flip over to Visual Studio, and let's launch Visual Studio now. Oh, look, it even tells me there's no connection. Hello, I got no internet access. How'd that happen? Right? No Ethernet. Yay! Do I have internet access here? It does look like I do. Let us, and this sometimes happens with VMware. I'm just putting it out there. No internet access. No matter what happens, I won't have access to wire. There we go. So I'm going to click on this little symbol here, and I'm going to go bridged. Hopefully that'll regenerate my signal here. And yes, no. This is just local to the Microsoft stuff. I may have to reboot my system because it still shows me no internet access, which is really bad, right? On my virtual machine. You know what? Just to make sure that it's not a problem. I don't know why it's funny how Microsoft is working, right? Or VMware is working with this stuff. So I'm gonna go NAT. We don't need it right now because I can do it locally, but I'd like to have internet access. That'd be nice. Oh, there we go. Yay. Okay, so I'm going to launch Visual Studio. Let's try this now. So here's Visual Studio. One thing I want you to note is I'm using Visual Studio Enterprise 2015. Like I mentioned earlier, if you use something else, like Community Edition, your experience might be different than mine. Or Professional. Even Professional is different than mine, right? So if you're someone who's watching the videos and they're going, I don't know why, but I can't get SQL Server Object Explorer. It's not available, Tom. It's probably because you're using Community Edition, right? Otherwise, you should have access to it. Let's take a look while this thing boots up. All right, we got the stuff here. We're going to make a new project. Let's do this together. I'm going to call this Lesson 8 because I want to kind of connect to do a demo, right? So, by the way, curious, was anyone unable to create their SQL server? Is anyone not able to create their SQL server? If you can't connect your SQL server, please see me during break because you need to have it. I'm putting it out there today, and we're going to use it, especially when you do things from home and stuff like that. Or hotspot, whatever you do, need to have a SQL server. All right? Okay. Okay. As long as you're okay, I'm good with that. Well, you can do that to connect it, but you just can't use it with Visual Studio. Visual Studio will not work. That's the problem with it, right? You won't be able to connect with Visual Studio. Can't do anything with Visual Studio. Okay. All right. I want to make a new web project. Okay. I'm going to use ASP.NET Web Application. Check out these other frameworks here. I haven't talked about them, but you have an option to do ASP.NET Core. right? If you don't have these, that means you don't have the latest version of Visual Studio 2015 with update 3, and that's the reason why you don't have that, okay? Otherwise, if you've updated to the latest version, you should have these options too, right? These two options. Also, please do not, and I mean capital D, do not click Application Insights. That'll mess you up when it comes to Azure, okay? So this is a no-no. Keep this unchecked, right? Same thing with down here. Make sure these two things are checked. That's a positive, a yes for these ones. Also, I'm using .NET Framework 4.6.1. Please, if you don't have 4.6.1, means you have to update your Visual Studio, okay, and your .NET Framework. Okay, if you do, please use this one. Don't use 4.5.2 or 4.5.x, okay? So the latest version is what I'm using. Okay, let's make this COMP229, and it's going to be fall 2016, and it's going to be lesson 8. That's where we are right now, okay? I'm going to move this into the COMP229 folder, and then I'm going to click OK. All right, remember, this is just an example site. I'm not going to connect it to my database because I'm on the wireless network. I made the database with you, so you've seen the creation of that, and we're going to get back to it, okay? For example, when I launch it from the machine in front of me, that's when I can do the wired stuff, right? But notice that I've got these choices now. Okay, I don't want to check empty. I don't want to check web forms. And I don't want to check web API or single page application. I want to check this one. I also don't want to do this. That's different than checking this. All right, so if I have empty and I check MVC down here, yeah, it prepares some of the stuff, but it doesn't give me authentication. Remember what I said to you? No authentication is a bad thing with MVC. All right, so let's leave it like this. And when you see authentication, there's some options. Notice that there is no authentication. That would be bad, right? There's individual user accounts, which is what we're going to be using. There's work and school accounts, which uses what? It uses actually Active Directory, right? And so we're not going to use this one. This is what if we want to hook into some kind of enterprise. And if I was going to hook into the enterprise, I would just choose this one for enterprise level authentication, right? There's also Windows authentication, which means there's no authentication. I'm not going to choose this one, all right? I'm going to choose this one and press OK. Now, I don't want to host in the cloud, so make sure this is unchecked, all right? And now I'm going to click OK. We're going to get back to unit tests again later on. All right, so clickety-click. We're going to have this thing kind of show up, right? Now, MVC, we're going to go through the whole, what the application framework looks like, right? And what you get out of the box. We'll talk about it for a second. Okay. Notice it takes quite a bit of time for me, even with my crazy system. It doesn't matter. It takes a lot of time for it to build. You're probably going to take more time than me, chances are. Okay, we have this little nifty page. This little nifty page in previous versions was actually quite useless, right? But now they have some really cool links here, like getting started with ASP.NET-MVC. There's actually some cool links here that talk about how to get started. Again, lots of tutorials that you can go through if you're really worried about getting this done. Let's close this link off for now. I don't need it. I also don't want to have my start page. I don't need that. So I'm going to start off with this page. Let's go over and compare the similarities between one system and the other. One, I have an app data folder, right? App data. Notice in my app data folder, if I show all files, right? Right now I have nothing. But if I start running this application and log in, there's going to be a database that's going to be created right in here. Okay. Also, if I uncheck this file, right now there's nothing, right? I have other things in here. I have a content folder with Bootstrap in pre-done. I didn't have to load it in. It was part of, remember I told you it's part of ASP.NET-MVC, okay? I have a controller, a few of them, account controller, home controller, and a managed controller. Guess what? We're not going to touch the account controller or the managed controller right now, okay? Those two controllers are used for authentication. Please leave them alone, okay? If you kill one of these two controllers, right, you will kill the ability for you to authenticate. That would be bad. Leave those alone. Other things not to touch at this point is under ASP or app start. All these files right now, leave them alone, okay? Don't touch them. as you can see, we already have a scaffold that we're working with. We're not starting out of the box with nothing, all right? So all these things, we're going to go into detail with all of them. For now, unless I say so, leave them alone. Don't kill any of the files, all right? Fonts. Glyph icons from Bootstrap. Models folder, we have a few models already. We have the identity models, our managing models, and our account models. Each of these classes are just for authentication purposes. Leave them alone, okay? We also have some scripts, JavaScript and Jquery, and they're the wrong versions. We're going to go and correct that in a bit, in a second, as we make our template. Here's our views as well. We also have a bunch of views. We have an account view folder, and a home view folder, and a manage view folder, and a shared view folder. Again, we don't need all these. These we can get rid of if you don't want them. But for now, leave the account folder and the manage folder, or else you can't log in. Okay? We'll talk about these in a second. Hey, there's a web config right here, and there's also a web config in here, right? I got two of them now, right? One to manage views, and the other one for global application management, which is right here. Okay? Same thing with my global ASAX file. Leave that alone. That is my global controller, if you will, right? Startup.cs, we saw that last time. It was the startup file that we use for authentication. We need that when we have Owen installed, right? We have it built in from scratch. Okay, cool. Before we run the application, let us update our NuGet packages and add in Font Awesome. So I'm going to right-click on my project or on my solution. So solution is this level, project is this level. Right-click on my project. And when I do that one day, it's going to give me a menu that says, right, manage NuGet packages, like we did last time, all the same. And if you notice updates, there are 10 updates, right? Okay, I don't want to update all of them. Remember we talked about this, right? So I want to select all of them, right? Oops, all of them, and then remove the jQuery stuff. So get rid of this jQuery right here, right? jQuery validation is okay, but be careful because anything with jQuery, when it comes to validation, will try and update jQuery to the latest version. So please leave these two off. But the rest you can leave on. And then click Update. So we're going to update our project because we want it to be the latest level, right? Also, there's some fixes that they have from a compatibility perspective. So we're going to do that right now. All right. Slowly, it's updating. Notice it's just updating the stuff. And we're going to have to, I want to upgrade my jQuery, but I don't want to go to 3.11. Remember what it was? 2.24. So that's the one I want right now. It's still the same one. Same thing with this one. Notice my latest one here, right? 1.15.1. Not that I don't want to go there for now, but I want to update jQuery first, this one, and see what it does. So I'm going to kind of click it. No, I don't want that one. I want to go to 2.2.4 and then update. Okay. Now, if I update this one like the way it is, this is Jquery Validation. This is totally different, right? If I click this one like this, notice it says, if I click on this, it's just the version of Jquery Validation for forms. So if I click this and update, notice there's no dependency, so it goes from one to the next, so it's okay. Good. Now there's only one that we haven't updated. Tells me that I have to restart my stuff, but I'm going to install one more package before I do that. So I'm going to go back to Browse. I'm going to go to Font Awesome, and I'm going to install that package too. Font-Awesome. I want my Font Awesome to be back in there. So I want to go 4.6.3, right? Now there's two of them, right? Actually, there's more than two of them. If I go to the top one, which is this one, Font Awesome for Twitter Bootstrap, this one. There's also this one down here, Font Awesome Toolkit, right? I want to choose this one. This one. This one. Okay, and click Install. Okay, loads in Font Awesome. We've got the latest version. Now it asks me to restart my computer, my Visual Studio. I'm going to say yes, restart. Okay. So we've updated our project, and the reason why we want to update the project is we want to have the latest NuGet packages loaded in, just like we did last time with web forms. Nothing different here, right? But also from a compatibility perspective, we want it to run properly. Okay, so a couple things we covered this half and last half of the semester. Package management, right, which we're using with Visual Studio and NuGet, right? And NuGet is the package managed solution for Visual Studio and Microsoft ASP.NET products. All right, we have other package managers out there. All right, for example, we have package managers for the web, right? Other package managers. Now it says, hey, do you want to include the web extension pack? Do you want to restart Visual Studio now? Yes, I do. Right? I don't care how many times I restart, as long as it's perfect. I don't want a problem later. I want to have the problems now so I can fix them. And once this is done, now here's something to do. Here's a question for you guys and girls, right? I have this lesson 8, and I just updated all my stuff. Do I want to do this again? No. What's the right thing for me to do right now before I do anything else? Template. Template. Why? Because I don't have to do all this stuff again. I don't have to upload those stuff. I don't have to include Font Awesome. I don't do any of that stuff. It's already done for me. So this is a great place to do a template. So remember, we did this in the exam, right? So I'll wait till this thing finishes loading. I have to be patient because I'm not a patient person when it comes to things loading. That's okay, right? If I don't wait, bad things can happen. So leave it alone. Like for example, see how it says loading my solution? That's a good sign that it's not ready. Okay. Here's what I want to do. I want to close the solution off before it loads, and I'll reload it. Better to do it that way than load a solution that's not ready. All right, so I'm going to kind of open my project or solution. If you have a problem like that when it says not ready, I want to go into COMP229, right? And I want to go into lesson 8, this one. I just kind of went there and press OK or open. Now, it should not say loading at the end. It should say one project like this. Good. Now that I got this perfect project, I'm going to go File. Oh, wait. Let's build. That's important. Let's run and build this thing. So I'm going to kind of click this. I'm going to run it on Chrome. Again, you can run it on anything else. I don't recommend just doing it on Microsoft. If you're someone who loves Edge, it's okay. But please run it on Chrome or Firefox as well to test it. Right? Now, this is running my local server, right, as well. So it's testing out this stuff, and you're going to see what you get out of the box for MVC. Okay, cool. I've got what looks like a menu, right? If I click Home, I go to Home. Click About. I've got an About page. I go to Contact. I got a Contact Me page. I can also register, right? If I wait for a second, I can register. Here's my registration page, and I've also got my login page. It's all built in for me, right? Now there's some pieces here I need to modify. Like for example, when it says use another service to log in, we need to change this stuff because right now we're not using a service to log in, right? Okay. Notice it also has register a new user down here. Good. We've run this thing for the first time. Here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to register or log in right now. I just want you to create templates. So let's stop. Yay. We've run the template. And we've done this on purpose. We've done this because if I was to run the template right now, it's going to generate a database. I don't want that as part of my template. I want to generate my database of my own. Okay? So let's go File. Here's my template creation for people who missed it for the exam, who have problems, right? I'm going to do this again next exam, right? So it's coming. You might as well know how to do it. File. Export template. You're going to choose the project template, which is this one, lesson 8. Click Next, right? And I'll leave it at lesson 8, right? Now, I can also make this, if I really want to make it, MVC -template, right? I could do that. It's okay to make a template like this, and then I can change it to whatever I want. I know it's an MVC template. Should be descriptive. All right, press Finish. Wait for it, and when the File Explorer comes up again, right, and it should show your template. Mine doesn't, but when yours comes up, it'll show you a zipped file. Wait till for it to finish. Now, when you see this come up like this, I know that my template is finished. I'm going to close this one down. I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to close my solution, and now I'm going to create a new project. Okay, I'm going to File, New Project. Okay, here we are. And underneath this, instead of Web, I'm going to choose C#. I'll scroll all the way down, right, till I see my COMP229 template. And where it says MVC template, this one, I want to use that one. I'm going to change the name of this. All right, so instead of F2016 lesson 6, I'm just going to say, or lesson 8, I'm going to say lesson 8. Okay, you can choose whatever you want for today. I'm going to click OK. And it's going to base it off the template. So I don't have to go and update stuff. I already have under my fonts. I have Font Awesome. It's all ready to go for me, and it's updated to the latest version. I'm going to be starting with this template every time, right? Or using this system to generate another one, like, for example, for MVC Music Store, right? OK, cool. Now let's log in and check it out, because we're not going to kill my template. We're just going to modify this one here. This is lesson 8. Who cares, right? So I'm going to go in there. I'm going to run it. It's going to generate the website again. Is it broken for you? It's loading? I know it takes time, right? I know, guys, you might think this is boring, but honestly, on an exam, it's required, right? And you're like, holy crap, it doesn't work for me. Well, it's because you never looked at it, right? So you need to do this stuff. That's why I'm asking you to practice it now, right? Okay, cool. Let's register for the first time. So I'm going to click register. Let's do this to show you what it does, right? We're going to explore the template, right? And I have to, it's asking me for my email and password. Okay, let's try. Oh yeah, it's here. Cool. And my password, I'm going to try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see what happens. 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and click register. And it's going to say, "Meh, I'm sorry. Passwords must be at least one non-letter digit character. Passwords must have at least a lowercase character. Passwords must be at least one uppercase character." Hello. Huh? That's it, right? So it doesn't say how big it is, but definitely it says one non-letter and whatever. So I'm going to use, again, Centennial with a capital C, right? Has to be long too, can't be short. For example, if I go Centennial, and then I go 1, right? Has to be one non-digit, one non-letter or non-digit character, right? So if I go Centennial, capital C, right? And if I put 1 at the end, let's do that. So Centennial 1. That's it. Click register now. Sorry, it says passwords must have at least one non-letter or digit character. I did password to Centennial 1. Right. Okay. Let's try again. So I'll say bigger one. So make, instead of Centennial 1, we'll say Centennial 2016. Oh. Oh. And I use an exclamation mark at the end too. Why not? Just to make sure it's good. Okay, now it's going to be working, right? Looks like it's going to be okay if I did everything correct. Yay. I'm going to save my password, right? Because I don't want to remember. Good. Now it says, hello, here I am. I'm logged in, right? I can certainly log off. It has that control, right? So it detects, these are all things that are built in to this whole thing, right? Here's my application name. This we've seen before, right? Here's my home. Here's my about page. Here's my contact page. Notice the form up here, right? When I'm using ASP.NET MVC, it looks like this, right? I'm just going to stop this for a second. Just so you understand the syntax. Okay, guys and girls? Under views, that's where all my pages are being shared, okay? So if you notice, it's gone to home, and underneath home, I have 3 different views. My index view, my contact view, and my about view. They all end with CS_HTML. What does that mean? C# HTML. All right, that's what it stands for. CS_HTML, right? That's what it's inside my views. So each one of these folders has a different view, right? Okay, where's my template? If you look at shared, and if you look at layout, there's an underscore layout.cshtml, underscore layout. If I double click on this, right, here's my underscore layout. Notice that it's something we've seen before, right, to some degree. This is kind of weird. I have this styles.render and scripts.render, some other weird things here. But I have this, which is very recognizable, what I have here. This is my menu, right? So if I want to say, if I want to change this stuff in my menu, this is something different. Notice that I have a couple things here. I have a action link, which is neat, and this little @ sign, right? And you know, I have it has almost like a little method that I'm calling. And I want you to think of it like this from now on. Whenever you see the @ sign, I want you to say this to yourself: hey, Razor, get me this method. Because Razor is accessing the method that's built in, right? So I'm saying, hey, Razor, get me an HTML action link. And what do I need with this action link? Well, if I hover over action link, right, with Visual Studio, it tells you what you need. Link text, which is the home button, right? And then it tells me, hey, what's my action name, right? This is this index. And hey, what's the controller that's linked to my action name? It's called the home controller. Notice that each of these things has the same controller controlling the logic for my view, right? But I have different link text, home, about, contact, and something called a different action. I want you to think about an action like a method. Each time I go to my controller, I'm going to have a method, right, that links to the to a page. Each method is the method that controls the page. Okay, so that's where it's different very much than web forms. There is no code behind file. Okay, I can't go to the code behind file. That's gone. There's no more code behind file. All the code. That's why we're using the model view controller scenario, the design pattern. All the code is either in your model or in your controller. Okay, that's where the code resides. There is no code in a code behind file. That's gone. Why? Because think about this. That means every page in their previous version, a previous framework, web forms, had intelligence behind it, like its own intelligence, right? There was no centralized data, or it wasn't object-oriented, right? Here we can use object orientation, that whole preferred way of doing things, right? On the back end, object-oriented framework, right? To control our data in a centralized location, right? So again, we're separating our concerns, as opposed to every page has its own stuff. That doesn't make any sense. That means it's not repeatable, number one. It's not reusable, right? It's not secure. Those are bad things, right? Whereas here, and it's, by the way, it's really slow, right? Here, it's much faster. You can see the speed. There's a real performance boost with ASP.NET MVC. It doesn't do a lot of round trips as much as we did with web forms. Web forms are round trips every single time. Every time you see run at server, it goes back does a round trip to the server. That's crazy. That's not right. MVC? No. It doesn't when it needs to, and when it needs to do. Yes. Because most people don't know how to do it. Right? Yes. We're going to talk about that, right? So a couple things to know. This is the template. This is like your master page. Okay? If you're going to compare one to the other, if you're going to go look at web forms and you're going to look at MVC, this is equivalent to your master page. So here under the shared folder, when we talk about views later on, right? We're talking about master pages. And there's no master page here. We're using a layout.cshtml, right? Notice there's also some partial pages for a login, also error, and lockout, and others, right? Each of these underscore layouts or anything like that, or even view start. View start by default is the default layout if you don't specify one. And notice what it does. It says, hey, Razor, curly braces. Let's do some C#. That's what it means. If I do this syntax right here, at open brace and then close brace like this, right? I'm saying, hey, let's do some C#. That's how Razor works, right? And that's how, you guys have, well, I just told you how exactly what you need to know to use Razor right now. If you want to embed C# in your web page, this is how you do it. Hey, Razor, @ curly braces, there's your code. Put your code in. And now I'm saying this, I'm saying, hey, for the layout for my application, because that's what this thing is, right? My application layout, right? Notice it says start page layout, right? I want to point somewhere. I'm going to point to a path. And I'm going to go to the views, shared folder, layout CSHTML as my default layout. That's what this is saying. So unless I specify otherwise, my default layout goes to views, my view start.cshtml. And then it immediately goes to and points to my layout CSHTML, which is here. Okay? Here's something else you may have noticed. right? And then we'll stop. We'll take a break. Okay. Notice that on the top, right, we also have these @signs, styles, render, and then I have CSS and @scripts render, bundles modernizer, and at the bottom I have @scripts render, bundles jQuery, and @scripts render, bundles Bootstrap. What is this? What's that? What it does is, what we have is under, remember I told you not to touch anything? I'm gonna break that rule right now. Right? We're gonna go to app start. Under app start, we have something called bundle config. This is really important. If I double click on bundle config, you can see that there is a bunch of different bundles added to the bundles container. I have a bundles container, a big list, okay? And each of my bundles container, I can bundle whatever I want, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, whatever I want, right? And other things. What's missing from our bundle? We have Bootstrap, and we have jQuery. What is it? Font Awesome. So where would you think it goes? It's got to go somewhere where my CSS bundle goes to, right? Notice that it says bundles, Bootstrap. And then I have bootstrap.js. This is JavaScript. And here's something, content, CSS, right? This is the style bundle of what it's going to really look like. This, my friends, is an alias, right? It's an alias for what the style bundle is called. So if I say, hey, @render style bundle, see content CSS, it means don't look at my content CSS. That's just an alias. Load these two things. Okay. So if that's true, site CSS is my, by the way, under my site CSS is right here. That's my custom CSS file, right? You can change that, remove it, whatever, right? Here, what I want to do here under Bootstrap is I want to put in Font Awesome, right? So let's do that. Let's first change. So we'll go here. Use the tilde sign to say absolute pathing, right, or relative path, content. And then we're going to look at, if I look at content, I want to look at Font Awesome. Notice that it doesn't say min.css because the minification is chosen for you. Leave it alone, right? So let's go to font-awesome, right, and then .css. And then make sure you put a comma because we're adding each of these links or these paths, right, into our bundles. Now we're going to save. So now I've updated my bundle config.cs, right, my class. And what I've done is I've added a bundle to my CSS, this piece right here. And when I call it in my layout.cshtml up here, right here, on this line, with my hey, razor, styles.render, this thing, I'm including Font Awesome. Okay, now that's great, right? Why? Because I can include custom bundles for JavaScript, especially if I'm running things like AngularJS, which I'm going to try and hit with you guys by the end of this course, right? I want to do a single page application with Angular, right? Instead of using Razor, we can do that. We can choose that MVC uses only a web API, right? That only gives you JSON data, and it's consumed by Angular. I'm going to do that little, maybe we'll do that example by the end, okay? So instead of using Angular in every single file, you can choose only some that use that bundle, depending on the view, right? Very powerful. Okay, so that's one. Let's test it to see if it's true by changing our action link. Uh-oh, we have a problem. I don't see a place where, well, I have my home. That's my home link itself is really my. If I look over here, if I hover over my action link, it says my action link. It's an HTML helper, right? Here's something great. You're gonna say, Tom, I know HTML. I don't need an HTML helper to help me write HTML. Yeah, hello. This is not just writing HTML. It's writing secure HTML, right? What this does is it checks so that your links can't get hijacked, right? Automatically. It builds in a lot of other stuff from the back end. You don't know you don't know exactly what's going on, right? Which is good and bad, right? On the good side, it builds your link for you that's secure, right? But notice that in my string here, my first argument, right, in this function is home, and this function first argument is link text. And if you remember when we did our Font Awesome, it's right next to the link text. So theoretically, I should be able to go into my home and add in my default links like this, right? And then make a space and put in my class for my I tag. So it's class is equal to, again, and then in single quotes, FA, right? FA-home, FA-large, right? Should do that. Now, if I'm right, then it's going to inject this piece inside my link text, which is inside the anchor tag, which is exactly what I normally do, right? So let's see if that works. So I'll save it. Just we'll do one, and then we'll see how it works, and press play. Now, if I did everything right, then my main page will show my home inside my link text. If I did it wrong, if it doesn't work this way, you're going to see that ugly I tag. It's going to break my page. Okay? So let's see what happens. Well, did you see that we have a problem? So why is it doing this? It's sanitizing what I've put in my link. It won't allow me. That's why I'm telling you, it's not what you think it is, right? You may think that it's just an argument. I'm putting in a string, right? It's not a string, right? It sanitizes what I put in. It stops me from putting or injecting kind of code into my URL, right? And it prints it out verbatim. So whatever I put in there, push out. It's not what we want. And there's another helper we're going to hit later on, right? That doesn't do this. It's actually called a URL helper or something like that, which we're going to get into. That'll allow us to do more custom links like this. Okay, let's go back. So stop. I want to show you this so you understand. But that's where it normally would be, right here, right? And if you ever want to know what you can do, you can always try it, right? It's not that difficult to figure out, believe it or not. If I go at, and then if I start typing URL, right? If I go URL helper, here's URL helper, dot, right? If I want to generate URL, I can do that. Or if I want to do at HTML and see what other things it can do for me, here's action link, right? Here's all the other stuff that it can generate for me. Like, hey, look this, display text. That's like a label, right? Display text 4, drop-down lists, all kinds of other stuff that's built in, and forms, right? Get type, and so on. You can see that there's lots and lots of stuff, labels and list boxes and names and passwords and a bunch of other stuff, okay? So we're going to explore this when we come back from break, right? But this definitely is not the way, okay? And I'm putting it out there for you, so just in case you think, oh yeah, it's easy, Todd. We'll inject an I tag in there and we're good to go, okay? Questions so far? I know it's a lot. We're kind of learning a new framework, but bear with me. One more thing before we stop, just to note, all right? Notice that this is my, let's get rid of this, that's a mistake. Notice that my nav bar looks like this. Here's my application name. Certainly you can change this. This is just a change. We can change this to, we'll call this MVC demo. You can do this, that's no problem. We know that's correct, right? Here's something else, notice that we can say at class, navbar brand. So we can put at classes in here as well, right? So we can use a new object and we can install a class, right, inside my object in here, in addition to all the links. Here's the link text, and then underneath, behind the link text, I can say, hey, make it look like a button, or make it look like something else, right? So even if we structure any kind of link like this, we can add this new at class, and then whatever the class is, this is a Bootstrap class, it'll color it. One thing to note is my controllers. If I go to my home controller, let's take a look at that for a second. Here's the class that supports my main page. Look, I've got something called an action result. Here's another action result. Here's another action result. Each of these action results represents a page. Okay? And here's my index, and here's my about page, and here's my contact page. So we have a method that's linked to each of the pages, and that's how we control all of our pages. One controller, multiple pages. So one controller can have a theme. One controller can be secured. One controller can do a lot of things where I can pass data from one page to the other. Questions so far? Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll fix that naughty font awesome problem and get moving with something more interesting.